We have a client who thinks very creatively and I think artistically about framing. This is handmade marbled paper from England. So she has this. She also has these beautiful antique prints of birds. And she wanted to use this like a mat board. So what we're going to do is dry mount the handmade paper onto a board, and this is then going to be mounted directly onto this paper. No window like in a window mat. She's also chosen a sort of beautiful proportion. So the whole thing is going to look kind of like that, with this bird really in this beautiful sea of this marbled paper. Should be a very interesting project. There's also a smaller one which is being mounted onto this beautiful paper from Italy. This is just an example of what we'll be doing with the birds. So the goal is going to be to get the image of the birds mounted down onto that beautiful handmade paper. And in this case, for the large ones, we want 4 3/4 here. And we want, I think it's 4 5/8 on each side, something like that. Here's the problem. These go down with through hinges, and you're going to see more of that later. So what you do is you make a little template like this, and can you see how all these lines line up with the hinges? Now, in a perfect world, I would put my template down. I would measure everything all even. I would cut my slots. These would go through the slots, as you will see later, and the piece will end up mounted perfectly in place. The problem is, if your slot is off just a little bit, if your template is off just a little bit, this piece can end up a little bit crooked. Now, with a border this big, it's not that important, but imagine I was doing this, as we often do, with a very thin border. Now, if it's off a little bit, it really shows. So what I do, and you're going to see this later, is I mount it down onto an oversized board so it can be crooked. And then I trim it evenly all the way around to the right border. And if you look at our little honey bear video, you can see the exact same thing that we did. This is the glass that was cut for the frame. I want my final piece to be the exact same size as the glass. And as I mentioned earlier, cutting 4 little slots in here and making everything line up, if this board was already pre-cut to the correct size, is really difficult. So I take my glass, I put it over the piece. And in this case, I want 4 3/4 inches down from the top. Now, of course, when this gets framed, the glass will not be touching the piece. There'll be a spacer. Now, you don't have to watch this whole thing, but you get the idea how I'm going to center. It's all centered. Normally, I just make little tick marks in the corners, and that's how I know where to trim it. But this paper is so hard to see markings on, I'm going to have to draw a pretty heavy pencil line all the way around.